I would cook for my housemates, and then sometimes I would like, you know what, bring a friend. And so the
And then were
number
you charging these friends?
at the beginning, no. Eventually, yeah.
Hello and welcome to My Signature Dish, episode 4. Thanks very much for downloading. My name's Ollie Horn and it's a pleasure to have you here. This is the podcast where I encourage talented home cooks to reveal all about their signature dish, the dish that best represents their culinary passions. And this week I'm speaking to Natasha with a double first. Not only is this the first female guest, something I've been very conscious of, the next two guests as well I think are going to be men, so I need to address that balance somehow. But also this is the first guest that I've recorded remotely. So I used this software which wasn't very good, and we had about 3 or 4 failed attempts, and Natasha was incredibly patient. But I am very surprised with how good the audio sounds. Well, I think it sounds good. I'm sure you're going to judge this for yourself and email me at podcast@pona.app, as some people already have done, about the terrible audio in previous episodes. I hear ya, I'm doing my best. So there are a few occasions where there's like a slight delay in the line, so that means that Natasha and I kind of treaded on each other's toes when we're speaking. Apologies for that. I've tried to edit them out, but please know that it was always me that was doing the interrupting, not her. So Natasha is Malaysian, a country that's very dear to my heart. My favourite comedy club in the world, I think, is in Kuala Lumpur. It's called the Crack House, and I spent a very happy week there performing to audiences from all different nationalities last year, and I enjoyed without question the best post-gig street food that I've ever indulged in. It was like this cart that had a series of skewers with different meats and vegetables, and you'd boil them yourself. You'd pick which skewers you want, boil them or fry them, and eat them there and then. I must have gone back 3 times. I'm a big fan of Malaysian food, and whether you're already familiar with Malaysian cuisine or not, I hope you will enjoy this conversation with Natasha, an entrepreneurial foodie who connected with the food of her home country while living in the UK from a very early age. And this connection, as we find out, was fortified when she moved to the Midwest of the USA. And so we start our conversation talking about Natasha's memories of her mother's cooking while they lived in the UK. Enjoy.
My mom, she had this habit of like, inviting people over, and we always had this open house concept. So it was very regular to see, people that I didn't know at home, especially students who just arrived in England, and then they would come over and eat my mom's food when they're feeling homesick and whatnot. And then my local friends would join
So this
when.
was like a place of cultural refuge
Yeah,
then.
yeah. And then I later on,
This is
yeah, and then
brilliant.
later on when I was an adult in the US, I realized I was actually emulating that. I was doing the same thing.
Brilliant. So let's first of all find out what on earth was your mum cooking that encouraged all of these people to flock to your house.
Yeah, my mom would use the opportunity to showcase her culinary skill by cooking those complicated dishes like biryani and like mutton curry and chicken curry, and then she loves to cook dishes that you would have to eat with rice, because then you'll have the rice, which she would make it pretty unique. It would be like nasi tomato, which is like tomato rice, or like what do you call it? We call it nasi minyak. That's butter rice, and that would be eaten with complex dishes like, like I mentioned, mutton curry, and you have chutney, and then you have like an assortment of other dishes like chicken cooked
Yeah.
in soya sauce, and or maybe like seafood cooked in what do you call it, sambal gravy, which is like spicy gravy.
And are these typical
Yeah, they are actually, but is there? But a lot of what my mom cooked was a lot of Indian dishes actually, because of our Indian background.
right?
So a lot of it was like Indian based. So it was like you have korma, you have curry.
Oh, delicious. And of course this is quite common in Malaysia, isn't it? To have people from multiple ethnic backgrounds all living in one family.
Yes, absolutely. And my mom will cook rendang. And I think when we were in the UK during Eid Mubarak, then my mom would cook all the dishes that is quite hard to get over there.
Sure.
But my mom would persevere. Yeah, like you do like like ketupat and nasi impit, which is like flattened rice, and then you eat it with this special what do you call it, peanut sauce.
Oh, delicious. And you mentioned rendang. That there'll definitely be some listeners that might not have enjoyed this. Can you describe that dish for us?
Yes. Okay. So rendang is like is pieces of meat that is cooked in a very thick what do you call it, mixture of spices, which would be, okay, you have your regulars, shallots and what do you call it, garlic. You have your lemongrass, and then you have your galangal, which is lengkuas here in
Galangal
Asia.
is that kind of gingery thing, right?
Yeah, yes, yes. So normally it comes like in a pair. So you have the ginger and you have the galangal,
Oh, they're different
and
things.
then oh, they're different. Yeah, but normally in Asian cooking, you have them. If you have if you've eaten tom yum, yeah. So galangal is actually used in tom yum.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
And that's that
but
really delicious soup, isn't it? That often has like prawns and stuff in.
yes,
Which is, I
yes,
think, it's a
it's a
Thai
soup.
dish, is it not?
It is. It's a Thai
Right.
dish.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard for a listener who hasn't been to Malaysia and experienced quite the melting pot that it is. I mean, I've only experienced Kuala Lumpur myself, but I understand the rest of the country is the same. Partly because of the British rule, and the British doing their best to kind of divide various ethnic groups up.
Yes.
Malaysia's done a really good job now of kind of bringing everyone back together, right? And you do have native Malays with Indians, with Chinese, all kind of living side by side and setting up restaurants
Yeah.
side by side and sharing ingredients. And
Mm.
my impression of Malaysian food is kind of fusion food at its most pure.
Yeah, but if you want to talk about pure, I would recommend you travel to Borneo. That means you go to Sabah, Sarawak, because over there you can still have you can try tribal food, because we have so many ethnicities there as well. You have like, the Iban, the Dayaks, and these are people who are really good at coming up with dishes that comes from the jungle. A lot of people, they would go to Kuala Lumpur to eat a Malaysian food, but I would tell you that it's a lot more difficult to get authentic Malaysian food in the city center, because a lot of the cooks in restaurants are not from Malaysia. So, for example, you have a lot more cooks who are Indonesian cooking Malaysian dishes. So, as a result, the dishes might be a lot more spicier,
Right.
and then yeah, the seasoning might be a little bit off. It might be a little bit more towards Indonesian cuisine. So
Right.
for yeah, my recommendation, if you want to really try like authentic Malaysian cuisine, try our Borneo dishes. It's
Sure.
actually
Well, who's to say
really
these Indonesian cooks aren't going to be changing the Malaysian cuisine paradigm, and so that's going to become the new normal. Um,
mm.
that's the history of
Yeah,
food, isn't it?
yeah. For example, like now you go everywhere, you see ayam penyet, which is smashed chicken. It's everywhere, and you have bakso. Bakso is actually beef broth with beef meatballs. So it's everywhere, and it's
They all
very
sound very
Indonesian.
delicious. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be complaining. But presumably, when you moved from the UK at the age of 12 back to Malaysia, presumably there wasn't too much of a cultural shock because what you were eating in the home would have
Yeah.
stayed consistent.
Yes, except that my mom simplified the dishes, because when my mom was in the UK, she had reasons to kind of like, cook a little bit more elaborate dishes, because like as I mentioned, there's a lot of people coming over, there's all that dining and
Right. So she
hosting
was
and
showing off a bit.
yeah, but coming back to Malaysia, it became more pragmatic, because it was more like feeding the family, and then we were all growing up, and it was more about what is time economical, and then so it would normally be pared down to white rice with maybe three dishes, and one would be protein, one would be vegetables, and then one would be maybe like it could be fried fish or omelette. So the other dish, when I said protein, it could be chicken or
Yeah.
beef. So it would be, the average would be like three dishes, to eat with rice.
My impression of Malaysian foods is that it takes an awfully long time. Like a lot of the dishes which I associate with Malaysia seem to just take hours and hours and hours of preparation.
Um, yeah, it depends though, because the ones that has rich gravy takes a long time because of the slow cooking method. But if we also have like fried rice, we have fried noodles, those are really really fast to whip up. Yeah, but still the preparation for to prep the ingredients, yeah, it does take a while. I mean, you can't cook Asian dishes, not the ones that my mom prepares. You can't do it in less than half an hour. So all those, like you have shows like Jamie Oliver's 30-minute cooking and whatnot. It doesn't really pertain to
Yeah.
Asian cooking.
Yeah, sure. And if a listener is going to go to a Malaysian restaurant in their country,
hmm
what do you think is the surefire thing that even abroad they're not going to get wrong?
Okay, go to a mama restaurant. That means you go to the one that's 24 hours open. And
Oh, these are in Malaysia, right?
yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been to them. They're brilliant.
Yeah.
At 3 a.m., you can
Yeah.
get like a beef rendang or
Ex-
nasi lemak or something.
yes, and
Some roti,
exactly.
fresh
And those are
roti.
pretty complex dishes, but you can get them 24 hours, and you can choose to eat it with rice, or you can eat it with paratha, you can eat it with bread. But it'll
Oh,
be
it's
a great
delicious, isn't it?
introduction for anybody who had just landed in Kuala Lumpur, and especially when you're really, really hungry, because you also have tandoori, you have naan, and you also have, like, the noodles. It's like a really great introduction to like Malaysian food 101.
And what if they can't yet get to Malaysia, but they're going to a Malaysian restaurant in their home country? What do you think is the thing which they're unlikely to get wrong?
I think a lot of restaurants that offer Malaysian dishes abroad would be nasi lemak.
Yeah. Okay. And can you explain what that is?
So that would be a very simple dish actually, because nasi lemak is
I love
you
it
have
so
it's
much.
yeah it's rice, but it's cooked in coconut milk and screw pine leaf. So it's very aromatic and it's very creamy. And then it will be eaten with sambal, which is actually a what do you call it? A spicy sauce that is made out.
It's very bright, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's made out of chili, dried chili, blended with shallots and garlic, and then a little bit of shrimp paste thrown into it, and then you put salt, sugar, and a little bit of vinegar into it to make it sour, and that's the sambal. And then sometimes they throw in anchovies into the sambal, and then you have fried anchovies, and then you have fried peanuts, followed by
How
cucumber.
interesting. And in
Mm,
terms of your cooking now, when you're making your own dishes in the kitchen, do you have any examples where
yeah.
you've borrowed from your world travels and created your own kind of hybrid or fusion dish?
Yes. I've actually created my own range of curry dishes, and the one of the main difference is that I don't put coconut milk into my curry dishes. So the gravy that you see is actually coming from the juices from the meat and from the blending of my ingredients.
Right. Are we getting close
Yeah.
to signature dish? Am I smelling the okay.
Yes.
Well, in that case, I'm gonna pause this particular line of questioning, and we'll come back here because I want to find out how we get to your signature dish. So, tell me, when was the next time that you left Malaysia for a new country,
That would be in 2005. I left for the US.
and how old were you then?
I was 29.
Okay, so you'd been in Malaysia for quite a while. Presumably, you've been working, been studying.
Yeah. But in the course of my work, I travel a lot. I travel across to Europe and so forth, but it's usually not more than 2 weeks at a time. And
Right.
yeah, and the thing that I prefer to eat when I'm traveling is usually pasta.
Particularly if you go to Italy, I would hope.
Even anywhere else, unless it's well, two types of dishes I would normally go for would be any kind of pasta dish, because it's fast and convenient and it's predictable. I can already imagine how it's going to taste like. And the other one would be like kebab.
Oh goodness me, yeah. Yeah, that's right. It's rare to get a particularly bad kebab, isn't it? Because often kebabs are made by, it's either going to be a Greek or a Turkish guy making it typically,
Yes,
and typically they know what they're doing.
yeah, the best kebab I've tasted was in Florence, actually, Italy.
I can believe that. So, which part of
Yeah.
the US did you move to?
I moved to the northern part, which was the northwest, Minnesota. But I lived in a very, very small town called Bemidji, which was sandwiched between three Native American Indian reservations.
Goodness me! And what were you doing there?
Um, I followed my partner at the time, who was studying in a local university. He was studying at Bemidji State University.
Right, and so you tagged along for the journey.
I tagged along, yeah. Why not? Because it was a nice change to the the busy city lifestyle that we had here in Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah, right. I can imagine. I've never been to the Midwest of the US, but I can't imagine that there's going to be anywhere nearly as busy as the center of KL. Do you remember your memories, that kind of your first few weeks when after you arrived in the US?
Yeah, I think when I first arrived in Bemidji, I was I was very impressed by the mom and pop diners. I love the whole vibe about it, small type of restaurants, everybody knew everybody. And then I remember tasting the very best roast beef dish. I mean, I've I'm not a beef person, but when I was there for 3 years, I ate the most amount of roast beef because it just tasted so good. And it's coming from all these mom and pop diners, served by a family.
So is that what a mum and pop diner typically serves then?
Yeah,
Is it mainly roast meat?
yeah, and where I lived, predominantly they eat a lot of beef and venison, turkey compared to any other types of meat. And it was a cultural shock for me in that sense because I'm not much of a red meat person. But when I went there, I kind of like flipped over, yeah, and I was like, because I think it was very important to experience this kind of dishes. And there was one time I went to a picnic and they served me bear meat, and I didn't know it was bear meat. I thought it was beef because
Oh, no,
yeah,
meat from a bear.
yeah, yes, yes,
What would that taste like? What's the equivalent animal that I might have eaten that bear
beef. It
tastes
tastes
like?
like beef.
Oh, right.
Because
Does it taste
yeah,
like
because
beef?
they cook it it was like chili con carne. So I thought it was beef cooked in, chili con carne.
Oh, what a waste! If you're gonna eat a bear, then why mask it in a chili
Exactly,
con carne?
yeah. And then, gay meat. So I've tasted quite a fair bit and it was really nice. And then um pigeon, you name it.
Goodness me, it sounds like you're eating more exotic food in the American Midwest than you were in Malaysia.
But I have to tell you, I was actually duped into eating them because my friends knew how picky I was. So they would normally lie to me at first and say, "Oh, is
Oh, that's
this,
not
is that?"
fair.
Yeah, and then after they'd be like, "Oh, actually, dot dot dot," and I'm like, "What?" But I like the fact that they did that. So I kind of, I was able to accumulate the experiences. Yeah, but my least favorite would be turkey.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had turkey and gone, "Wow, wow,
Yeah.
I'm so glad to have had that."
Yeah, and I think it's very very unusual to have for Thanksgiving turkey with cranberry sauce because cranberry sauce is so overpowering. So I would end up eating the cranberry sauce by itself.
Right, well, um, I suppose that what's that? That's the cultural equivalent of me, going to, I don't know, me going to Malaysia and buying a mee goreng, and just picking out the I don't know, just picking out the chicken, um,
Yeah, and everything else
not eating the
that makes it
noodles.
important. I think like kway teow goreng, but you're removing the what do you call it? The clams, taking out the clams.
Yeah, right, that's a much better example. You got there
Yeah,
quicker than I did.
when you
Uh
need the clams because the clam is what makes the flavor for the dish in the first place. Yeah.
Precisely. And so when you were cooking at home, were you cooking Malaysian food or were you trying to adopt the American way of life?
It's funny because when I was in the US, I became so patriotic to everything Malaysian. And I
That's very common this happens, isn't it?
yeah, and for some weird reason, I was reaching out to all the difficult dishes. I think my mom, she if she would have been so proud because these were the kind of dishes I would not attempt in Malaysia. But I think mainly because my mom is around, my grandmother, and these are like fabulous cooks, and you don't want to be in their shadows, right? So when I was there, I think because I was on my own, I was thinking, you know what, I can screw this dish up. No one would know.
Right, no one's going to judge you.
No one's gonna judge me, right? And friends are there, they're very supportive. So yeah. So I started cooking all these dishes like, chicken curry, chicken kurma, and even for Hari Raya, I even cooked beef rendang. I did my peanut sauce, and I actually did satay. I
Oh, I love chicken satay
Yeah, I did that,
with
and I
that lovely
used
peanut sauce, right?
yeah, and I used the conventional oven, to do satay, and
Okay, presumably you have to put the oven very, very hot in order to do that then.
yes, and the trick is to what do you call it? To soak the skewer sticks.
Ah,
S-
soak them in water so they don't
Yeah,
burn.
soak them in water,
Yeah.
and then later on when you put it in the oven, it won't burn. And then I realized that when I to make my peanut sauce, my peanut gravy, right, to go with the satay, I use the already roasted peanuts, and they bring out a fantastic flavor to
Oh,
the
this does sound
yeah,
delicious.
to the peanut satay sauce. And until today, I keep convincing my mom, you should try and buy those ready-made roasted peanuts and blend them and use that for your satay sauce. And she's like, no, 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 no,
Well,
But
I heard a good tip for satay sauce
mm,
is to use a spoon of peanut butter. Is that a terrible thing to do?
it's not. But I can tell you that I tried it before, and if you use those party peanuts, in the US they used to have those big cans of party peanuts, right? Those ready-made roasted peanuts. You don't need to put a tablespoon of peanut butter at all. It doesn't make a difference.
Oh, okay, fine. Well,
Yeah, it's like a placebo.
that shows me that. Oh, well, possibly, yeah. Well, I suppose like you, right? If I'm cooking food that my guests have not tasted before, then I go, yeah, that's authentic. That's how it's supposed to be,
Yeah,
even when it's
yeah.
burnt or bad.
And then
So who are you cooking for?
okay, I first I was cooking for myself because I was feeling homesick. And when you're so far off and you're 12 hours difference from your family, it was difficult to communicate efficiently because when I was awake they were asleep. So I think to fight loneliness, I was cooking for myself to find some kind of familiarity. And then so it was very important for me to get to the exact taste because I wanted to reclaim my experiences of home. But to do that, and because to cook in a pot, I'm like, I'm not going to eat this by myself. I'm not going to, like, spend all these hours preparing cooking for myself. So i would
I know
i
exactly
would
that
cook
feeling.
yeah, so I would cook for, and plus it costs money, right, to get all the ingredients. So I would cook for my housemates, and then sometimes I would, like, you know what, bring a friend. And so the
And then were
number
you charging these friends?
at the beginning, no. Eventually, yeah.
Oh, brilliant! So this turned into like an entrepreneurial venture.
Yeah, because if eventually what happened was, people were talking about my food, not so much that it was like, whoa, fabulous, because they didn't know any different, right? And I think people were just so happy to eat something familiar. But the news spread because, among the local people, it was just something exotic. It was something that is so unusual because
And what kind of people are we talking about? We're talking like proper Midwest,
yeah,
like never ventured outside their town,
no,
you know.
no, no. In fact, I mentioned that we were sandwiched between three Native American, Indian, reservations, but we also had a community of Mennonites living.
Mennonites. This is
Yeah,
a church,
yeah, they're from Pennsylvania, like an offshoot of, like, I think the Amish, and
right?
community.
And do they have special dietary needs?
They don't, but they are like, it's more about their lifestyle. And yeah, so
And how would you describe that lifestyle?
it's
What's it like?
very, very authentic and very, very, what do you call it?
By authentic,
It's
do you mean primitive?
No, it's unadulterated with preservations and additives. Everything
Oh,
is
right.
just
Okay.
cooked from scratch, and it's so wholesome and healthy. And I learned a lot more about appreciating food from them, actually. And I like the fact that, when they invite you over for a meal, you have to earn your food, so they'll make you do stuff. So I had to grind wheat because they were going to make
Oh, this sounds great.
cornbread.
This sounds
Yeah,
like great
yeah.
fun.
My friend had to, she had to churn. She was doing butter, and then another one was doing something similar for ice cream.
Imagine that, seeing ice cream on the menu and then going, "Well, we're gonna give you the constituent parts," and
Yeah,
it's like going
exactly.
to a hotel and saying, "You're gonna be making your own bed. Here's some wood, here's some nails. Have a good night's sleep when you're done."
Exactly. And I thought that was so fun because it was like,
Well, it would make you appreciate it more, wouldn't it?
yeah, and also because you were part of the whole preparation, you were in the kitchen, and that's when the stories come out, and they will talk to you about their life, their culture, what what makes them so true to their, what do you call it, to their way of life, and so forth. And you must remember, the Mennonites, they live in the middle of nowhere. And
Yeah, right.
yeah, so we were completely disconnected, and there was nobody had a smartphone. It was just us talking, and and after we finished eating, we would sit together and we would talk, share stories and sing. And
And did the interest flow both ways? Were they as interested in your background as you were in theirs?
yes, but they were more surprised that I was very I was global, because I remember, it's a very funny story, because we were sitting together and we were having dessert, and then they were like, "Okay, so let's tell us a little bit about yourself." And then I was like, "Oh, are we going to sing Kumbaya?" And then they were like, "You know that?" I'm like, "Yeah, are we gonna do that?" And then they were like, "Oh, we're kind of surprised that you actually know that, because a lot of local Americans were not very familiar of that." And because I grew up, in St. Mary's, under the Church of England, back in the UK, so I knew a lot of hymns. So
Right,
yeah, so
okay. They must have loved
yeah,
this.
and they were like, "Oh my god, what is this?" It's an entertainer. So I was like telling them, "Oh yeah, these are the hymns that and then the Lord's Prayer and so forth." And yeah, so they were so amused, because when it came to Christmas, instead of singing those commercial pop, Christmas songs, I was familiar and I was singing Christmas hymns.
Brilliant. And did you get much of a chance to cook for them?
Yes, they would come in and eat. They would come over, and then I would cook them chicken korma. The thing is, I realized they prefer chicken korma to chicken curry, because korma had a milder taste. They felt that curry was a little bit too strong, and I make my curry a little bit on the sour side. So chicken korma was like a perfect blend for them. It was like, what do you call it? The chicken was cooked. It was slow cooked in coconut milk. But I told yeah,
Is
but I
this your
told them
signature dish?
I don't cook in coconut milk. They're like, "Oh, but whenever we Google, it's like, coconut milk." But I said, "No, this is my own signature dish, where it's literally cooked in its own juices, and with and all the ingredients." Yeah.
Brilliant. Right. So I want to hear. I want to hear all about this korma. So my understanding of a chicken korma is I'd eat this
Yeah.
at an Indian restaurant, and it would be almost sweet because of the amount of
Mhm.
coconut milk used, and probably the mildest curry on the dish. I think as a young boy, that's the curry which my parents would order for me. And then you kind of graduate from a korma. I think like you get to the age of 13, and then toxic masculinity means that you get bullied out of eating a korma, and you have to like upgrade to I don't know, a tikka masala, right? And then you carry on until you're
Yes.
showing off and eating vindaloo. So for me, a chicken korma, and it's almost like a little bit.
Mhm.
It tastes a little bit nutty. It's quite fragrant but quite mild, and I'd always remember having a chicken korma with kind of pieces of chicken
Mhm.
breast. Um, Boneless in an Indian restaurant. So that's when I'm imagining a chicken korma, that's what I'm imagining. Maybe
Mhm.
even like a little bit of cream on the top.
Absolutely different.
Is
First
yours
of all, I
different?
would never use chicken breast for any of my slow cooking dishes. And I will use dark meat, and I it's important to put bones into it. So I would use drumsticks, or I would use the thigh part of the chicken
And you keep the
for
bone in?
my. Yes, absolutely, because
Perfect. We're
that's the beauty when you slow cook them. But for me, my signature dishes must have cumin, because I love cumin. I even put a
really
lot of
addictive, isn't it?
cumin in my masala tea. Yeah, and I think the combination of cumin, fennel, cardamom,
Oh, okay, we're going too
cinnamon.
fast. Slow down.
Oh,
Let's. So how does this dish start? This dish starts with you preparing the chicken, does it?
no, no. It starts with you blending the shallots, uh, garlic, and ginger. You always begin with this dynamic trio.
Right. This is like the Southeast Asian mirepoix,
Oh, yeah, yeah. It all starts from there.
and
Most Asian.
you're using ginger, not what's it called, galangal.
No, for curry and kurma, you don't use galangal.
Right, because it's a bit too
Yeah.
strong. Okay, so you've got
Yes.
these three, and then you're sautéing them in a pan.
Yes. And here's the trick. I don't use regular oil. You don't use what do you call it? Vegetable oil or olive oil. I think olive oil is the last on the list. But my recommendation, which is what I use as for my signature dish, is either butter, lots of it,
Okay,
or ghee, which is
ghee.
clarified butter. Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying that.
And it brings out the aroma and it just makes it more rich. But my dishes, okay, forget about counting calories. That's not gonna work.
Sure. Okay. Well, fine. I'm completely in agreement. So you've sautéed these three ingredients, and then what are
Yeah.
we adding next?
Okay, and then the korma powder, you have to mix it with water. It'll come in a powder form, right? So you can buy either ready-made korma powder. It will literally
I'm not
state
gonna buy
korma.
no korma powder.
Yeah, or you can make your own blend, which I can share with you what you need to do. But you
Now we're
blend,
talking.
yeah. So you make it into a thick paste. You can't make it. You don't put too much water. You have to make it into a very thick paste. So
And then you're cooking this paste out as well. Then.
yeah, so you add it into what do you call it, into the pot together with the blended ingredients.
Okay. And so what's inside this paste?
Okay, so you have cumin powder, fennel, white pepper, black pepper, and then you have uh, a little bit of chili powder, but I usually put very, very little or maybe none at all. And then you should put also cardamom pod, star anise, cloves. You can put one stick of cinnamon, and you can what do you call it?
A stick of cinnamon in a paste? That doesn't make any sense.
Um,
You're putting a whole stick of cinnamon in.
you can put you can choose. You can put cinnamon powder into it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, that makes
or
sense.
you can put a stick of cinnamon into when you're sorting it right into the pot. You can just throw it into
Ah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So some people they would put all the dried ingredients first. So for example, your cardamom pods, your star anise seed, your cloves, your stick of cinnamon, you put it in, and then you kind of like
And kind of
yeah,
toast them.
toast them a little bit and then you put the paste. Yeah. But then it depends, like
Right.
there have been times where I keep forgetting to put them in. I'm so excited to put the paste in. So to trick myself, I'll just throw all of the dry ingredients into the paste and it just go in. But that's just me. But it's better to toast them first.
And so sure. And so once this paste has got to
Yeah.
temperature, what's it looking like in the pan? Is it kind of all
Yeah,
congealed?
congeal and then it'll brown. But it's very important you control your fire, your temperature. So make sure that you lower the temperature because you want it to slowly brown and not burn. Very important. And you've got to be very sensitive to the smell. Do not put a lid on it and then go off and do something else because it will burn. So you need to constantly stir it and you got to wait for the smell. Very, very crucial.
Right. And how will you know when it smells right to move
Okay.
on to the next stage?
It's like when you toast, okay, it's a very good question. When it smells cooked together, like for example, when you saute garlic in olive oil, right? And there's a difference when you just throw it into your frying pan and then slowly when it browns, there's that kind of distinct smell that comes with the browning. Yeah, that sharp smell that is cooking. Yeah, that is the same thing. So
And Okay, I can just about picture this. Then
Hmm.
when we've kind of
Hmm.
got to this stage, are we adding any
Not yet.
liquid yet?
Make sure that it browns nicely, and it smells very, very aromatic. It's sharper, but it doesn't smell raw anymore. And then you another way is to look at the consistency. So the liquid that you added into the paste, right, it's almost gone. So, and at the bottom of the pot it's turning brown, it's not burning, and that's when you put in your pieces of meat.
Good. And we're putting this meat kind of straight into the, so we're not browning the meat first. We're just putting it straight in.
No, putting it straight in, and then the liquid, the juices coming out
Interesting.
from the meat immediately will sort of like prevents the ingredients from burning. So sometimes what I do is, yeah, so sometimes what I do is I put the meat in, and then you can see the juices coming out, and then I put a little bit of milk, just a little bit of water, a little teeny bit of water, maybe like I don't know, maybe like as just enough water to cover the meat
Right. Okay.
in the
And
pot.
so
Yeah.
then, is this like a Dutch oven we're using? So there's like a lid that we can.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. I recommend you only to cook curry and korma to use Dutch oven because it will splatter. So it's better to just use that.
Right. So the
Mm-mm.
chicken's in,
The chicken's in.
lids on.
Yes, put the lid on, and then this is where you turn your temperature even lower. It's gonna slow cook now.
Amazing.
And this is where it differs from my mom's cooking and my grandmother's cooking, because my mom and my grandma, when they cook korma or curry, it will be the same temperature throughout. And at this point, when they put in the meat, they will already put in the coconut milk. So the coconut milk will cook together with the meat. I don't do that.
Okay. What's your twist?
So I will let the chicken cook um in all that ingredient, right? And I let the juices come out, and there's already a little bit of water added into that, and I let it just marry into the whole thing. And then when the meat is cooked, I open the lid and I have a look at the meat when it's cooked.
How roughly how long later are we talking there?
Um if we're cooking one whole chicken, it would be like about 20 minutes.
Okay. And this is a whole chicken that's cut up into
Yeah.
pieces, right? We haven't just put a whole
Or
chicken in.
yeah, so or just you just buy, the drumstick or the thighs. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
20
The
minutes.
dark meat,
Yeah,
the
minimum is
delicious part.
20 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, that seems quite quick.
Not because it's yeah, because
If
it's
if
not done
I'm
yet. That's just the first part.
oh, okay, right. Well, I've just jumped ahead of myself. There's me looking in the pot, going, "Is it done yet? Can I have my dinner, please?" And you're
No,
going, "No,
no.
lid back
Yeah,
on. The best is yet to
exactly.
come."
And then when it's cooked, and then yeah, you open the lid and you have a look at the meat. So it should be like, almost cooked now. But then what you do, that's when you start to add the seasoning. You add a bit of salt and a bit of sugar, and I use tamarind juice. Now, if I don't have tamarind juice, and say back then it was quite difficult to get tamarind juice, I would, yeah,
Tamarind juice.
it's from the tamarind fruit.
Right. Well, okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
But yeah, but if you go to a Asian supermarket, you can find it actually. Yeah. But if not, you can just use regular vinegar,
And could you
and then
buy
you
tamarind?
uh back in the US
Yeah.
or in Malaysia. Back in the US it was very, very difficult actually.
I'm trying to imagine what tamarinds look
So
like. They look like dried edamame beans, don't they? Like brown.
yes, brown color. Correct. That's right.
Do
But a
they
whole
don't
lot bigger
seem like
than
they
edamame.
don't seem like they got juice in.
No. Actually, if you were to okay, if you would take a tamarind pot, right? And then you open it, it's actually it's it looks like it's like a fruit, yeah? You can eat it straight away.
What does it look
But
like
what they do
inside? I can't even imagine breaking one. Well, I can imagine it's got like a crusty shell, right?
yeah.
And then inside, what does it
Mhm.
look like? Is it dark inside?
It's Yeah, it's dark inside and then
Right.
it's got a seed in the middle. So what they normally do is to make the paste, they will just remove the seed and they just, pulp
Yeah.
the flesh together into a huge ball, and that's how they sell it, or they will put it in a container.
This does sound like an absolute nightmare. No wonder it's hard to get
Yeah,
this
but
juice.
it's not like, it's not like you squeeze a lime and it's running, it's all juicy and runny. No, no. It's like condensed, what do you call it? Sourness into one pot. So you put a bit of that paste into the korma with the salt and the sugar. You stir it, and that's when you incrementally add water up to how thick you want the gravy to be. So like for me, I like it to be thick unless I have requests from my friends who are like, oh, can you make it a little bit more, runny? Then I would add more water. But personally, I like it to be quite thick.
Sure. So you've added this
Mm-hmm.
paste, you've added your seasoning,
Mm-hmm. Put
and
the lid back
then
on.
lid back on. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry,
And
lid back
then
on.
you let it, and then you let it slow cook for another 20 minutes.
Okay, so total cooking time about 45 minutes then.
Yeah, to an hour.
Right. And then by this
Mm.
stage, the chicken has presumably got kind of fall off the bone tender.
Slightly, yeah, and that's perfectly fine actually, because the whole idea of having the bone in is actually to kind of like enrich the
Yeah.
flavoring. Yeah,
And
but
the
mhm,
skin won't have gone kind of brown, will it? The skin will be like still
yeah,
soft.
very very soft. In fact, the skin would have slowly like disintegrated because it's like, it's pretty much cooked to death. That's how I like to describe it.
Well, the
How do you cook your chicken? Cooked to death. Yeah, but
well, oh
the
yeah,
yeah.
but chicken, that chicken is necessarily dead, isn't it?
Yeah, but what happens then is also I would add in potatoes. I would cut potatoes and thickly, thick chunks of carrots. I would put that in, so that will go last actually.
And this is very off piece now, isn't it?
No, actually, because kurma and curry, they do have potatoes and carrots and all that, but it's just that I don't
Do
cook
they?
them together with the chicken from the get-go, because that's when it'll be too soft. And when
Right.
when the potato disintegrate, it will make the gravy unnecessarily thicker, and I don't want that. I don't want the gravy to be thickened because of the potato.
So in the curry, you can see these whole chunks of carrot and potato.
Yes,
This is
absolutely.
just like a Japanese curry, actually. The way that they'll create a curry, very
Yes,
sweet curry.
yeah, yeah.
You'll have these whole chunks still left in.
Yes, and then sometimes just to make it more colorful, I will take green chilies, and then I would slice it in half, and I'll just put it in. And so you have the orange from the carrot, and then you have the potato, and then you have the green from the green chilies.
I imagine it looks absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And what was the reaction to your new American friends when they were
Oh, they
tucking into
love
this
it.
dish?
They thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. So they love
And was
it.
sliced bread a new invention in that area too?
They love it because number one, it's not too overwhelming. It's not spicy at all. But the fact that the the chicken doesn't taste just chicken meat. It's got seasoning, flavoring in it, and then there's and um they love the whole idea of they think it's very very exotic because they're not familiar with the combination of cumin and fennel and white pepper and then all these dry ingredients like cinnamon, cloves. They know these ingredients. They use them, but to put it into something savory, it was just mind blowing for them. So
And now you're back in Malaysia. Do you still cook this dish?
I do, but only for my friends, and if I have private sessions, because uh, I I I don't cook these dishes for my family, to be honest, because the culture here is I think the recipe of the family always goes to the eldest in the family. So my mom's recipe will reign supreme, and I usually cook my signature dishes for my own friends. And so when I go to my mom's place, I would appreciate her signature dish. because my mom, she thinks my dishes are too contemporary.
That was Natasha. I really enjoyed speaking to her. Well, in fact, I enjoyed speaking to her. I didn't enjoy the process because this wretched software that I used to try and record this was so buggy. And I'd say a good 40 minutes of really interesting chat got sacrificed to the podcast gods. And so, unfortunately, the audio which you heard is the bit which I could salvage. But she had so much to say. But I do think even the part which we managed to hear does her justice. She's so thoughtful about her food. And obviously, the fact that she's so inquisitive, all of her experiences about learning from other people and sharing her food has obviously turned her into somebody that has a lot of strong convictions about food, and I really enjoy talking to people like that. So that's it for episode 4. Episode 5's really exciting. I've just come back today from the BBC Good Food Show, which is held in the NEC Birmingham in the UK twice a year. And I'm not going to reveal who the guests are, but I'm extremely glad to have spoken to them. They are very, very big names in food, and I learnt so much speaking to them. So I look forward to sharing that episode with you this time next week. To be the first to get the episode, please be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it. And as ever, if you have any questions, anything you'd like to say, then please do email me at podcast@pona.app. That's podcast@pona.app. I'll see you next week.